Hello friends, it's Kayla. Welcome to my favorite video of the year, the third annual Reading Booktubers Favorites of the year prior. This year we're looking at Booktuber favorites from 2021. Year one, we were very scientific with it. It was booktubers who had the most similar favorites to me at the end of the year. And if any book showed up more than once across all of those like 10 booktubers, I then had to read that book. The results of that one weren't great. There was about 4 dislikes and 2 likes by the end of it. The following year, I made it a little more customizable. So it was the same concept, but a larger sample size and with a little more of a personal touch. I was more picky about the books that I chose and mostly chose ones that I genuinely thought I would enjoy. And in that one, we ended up with 3 dislikes and 4 likes. So we're constantly improving. This year we're going to be even more selective and I'm doing it slightly differently. To start, there is going to be 5 little challenges because of course there is. I'm going to pick 5 booktubers that I have the most similar favorites to. Second challenge is to pick something that is both on somebody's favorites list, so it could be from the favorites we just figured out, or it could be chosen in a different way, but is also seen on somebody's least favorites list of the year. I have a whole playlist of this. I've been watching these I have already watched. I've seen everybody's least favorites. It's been so fun. I want something, definitely, hopefully more than one thing, that is already on my TBR. I also want something that I have absolutely never heard of. And then I also want to select a book from a booktuber who has no similar books to me. Not even similar favorites, but like no similar books. Because I have 50 videos in this playlist that if you're seeing they've already been like watched, it's because technically they have. We'll talk to you about it in a second. So it's not just like the book that's talked about the most on BookTube. It's not about reading books that show up the most or that have the highest rating. It's about who has similar taste to me and picking from those. We're gonna start with 5 people. Because what I did this morning is I went through my playlist. Just shout out to YouTube for having this as a thing. The ability to scrub through somebody's video. I can see every single book that has shown up. So I did that with my entire playlist. I think there are some booktubers that could pop in with a favorites video like a week from now and throw off this entire thing. But right now I have a sample size of 50 and I found 5 booktubers that have 5 or more books in their favorites videos that I also rated a 4 or 5 star myself. And now we're gonna go back through and actually watch the videos together. They all just blended together and I really do not remember what everybody had, and a lot of things I just absolutely didn't recognize. So those 5 booktubers that I saw have the most in common that we're going to watch now are Gabby with 8 in common, which is not a surprise. Gabby is always the most similar to me. Next is a booktuber that I just found this morning. This is the video of the year that I usually find the most people that I'm gonna watch for the following year. And this woman named Elizabeth popped up and unexpectedly she had 7 in common with me. And then with 5 in common, tied, are Deja, Riley, and Ashley. So we're gonna start with Gabby and get a recommendation from her, though I'm pretty sure I already know what it's gonna be. And I'll tally up as I go to make sure that I was accurate.
Things have gotten worse since we last spoke. And then I have The X-Talk, The Book of Accidents, Local Woman Missing, The Drowning Kind by Jennifer McMahon, Black Girls Must Die Exhausted, When the Reckoning Comes, A Lot's Away, Follow Me to Ground, We Need to Do Something, as well as The Maiden.
The Maiden's was 4 stars. So that's 6 already just in her honorable mentions. I'm also not going to spoil the entire favorites, so I will just show you when something pops up that I guess I haven't read.
People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry.
Listen, I'm not choosing violence this year. I am gonna go with likely to like.
Coming in at number 10 is actually a book that I read this month. It's A History of Wild Places.
Okay, listen, I don't know what this book is about. And so you might say to me, Kayla, you're not picking ones that you're most likely to like because you don't even know what it is. But here's the thing. I already bought it. I saw it pop up. I'm not sure where, because maybe it was in like an Instagram post and Gabby was like, this is like my most recent favorite. It just came out of nowhere. And I've always thought in the back of my head, if this author ever comes out with something adult, I'm gonna pick it up. I think the only thing I know is it's like a mix of thriller with some weirdness, like magic potential.
In my dreams, I hold a knife.
Okay, that's the number 7 in common.
Coming in at number 6 is going to be Near the Bone by Christina Henry, The Winter People by Jennifer McMahon.
I am interested in The Winter People, but if we're talking about like what I think is most likely to be a success for me, it's not that, just because I didn't like The Drowning Kind.
Number 4 is going to be The Push.
I know I've seen it like 10 times today as I was scrolling, so it is a really popular booktube favorite, and that makes me weary.
Number 2 is going to be Finlay Donovan is killing it.
I did buy this too. I was actually going to pick this up with a couple other mystery books this week, like the first week of January, so I would have a vlog to post near the beginning, because I know that this isn't going to get posted until the end of the month. But I've seen this pop up a couple times, so I think I might actually just include it in this whole video. I didn't remember Gabby reading this. I don't know why. It just seems too fun for me. I don't think I like fun mysteries, but I really want to try it.
It's something that's like slightly out of my comfort zone, but yeah, it's amazing because it's Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir.
So Gabby and I had 9 favorites in common, and I have 11 to choose from. There's a couple that I know I shouldn't pick, like objectively. There's a couple I can't pick because I want to read them for something else. There's some that I'm just not interested in. And I'm really left with Stolen Tongues, A History of Wild Places, and Finlay Donovan. Cool, let's move on to, who did I say? Oh, Elizabeth. Let's all meet Elizabeth.
Hello, my beautiful bookish friends. I'm Elizabeth, and this is Reading Riley, the Thursday Murder Club. Also, one that I've read recently and loved, Bunny. I don't know if you're Team Bunny or not, but I am. Oh, also, Local Woman Missing by Mary Kubica. And then also, The Martian. I just read this year.
I really did forget all the things that I saw while I was scrubbing.
The Burning Girls by C.J. Tudor. Meet Me in Another Life by Catriona Silvey.
I love the cover.
Is The Good Daughter by Karen Slaughter.
Yay!
Oh, it's so shiny. Actually, surprisingly enjoyed this, and that is In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. The Only Good Indians, No Exit, and that is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir.
Whoops, we had 8 in common.
Read this for a vlog where I was reading Ashley's recommendations from Ashley's Little Library.
That's the other person on my list.
And it blew me out of the water, and that is Migrations by Charlotte Mcconaughey. It's set in kind of like a near future dystopia where basically 80% of the world's animals have gone extinct because of the ways that we have treated this earth. Dark Places by Gillian Flynn.
I think I must have missed her honorable mentions. I must have skimmed past them really quickly, because we now have 9 in common?
Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter. I told you she was going to come up again.
That's 10.
If you've been watching me for a while, I don't feel like this is going to be a surprise, although I haven't talked about it in a while. It is The Humans by Matt Haig.
Oh. Elizabeth and I had 10 books in common. I actually want to look a little more into Meet Me in Another Life and Migrations, but I do have 7 books to choose from that she mentioned. Yes, 2 of them are already on my TBR, but I've heard such mixed things about them that I don't know yet. I might also consider The Humans. Next up, since she mentioned Ashley, let's go to Ashley.
Another thriller that is very hit or miss for people is The Maidens, Behind Her Eyes by Sarah Pinborough.
Yes.
The last thriller on my list is a YA thriller, and that is The Girls I've Been by Tess Sharp.
This was on my TBR and I took it off my TBR this year.
Night of Mannequins by Stephen Graham Jones. Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke by Eric LaRocca. Book of Accidents by Chuck Wendig. Also The Bottom of the Lake by Josh Mallerman.
Perfect. That makes 5.
The next book is The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein by Kirsten White.
That one's on my TBR shelf.
Down Among the Sticks and Bones by Shauna Mcguire.
Oh gosh, that makes 6. My mistake.
People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. And I've talked this book to death over the years. Migrations by Charlotte Mcconaughey. Absolutely my favorite book of the year.
You know what? Migrations intrigues me. I'm not making any decisions right now. I am starting to be overwhelmed with the options. So we're gonna move on to Deja. I think I have 5 in common with, but let's watch.
I'm going to start with the honorable mentions.
Honorable mentions.
So the first honorable mention that I have is Good Girl Bad Blood by Holly Jackson. The next book that I have is Obsidio by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff.
Maybe this is when I should read Obsidio. I'm not going to.
Brown by Tiffany D. Jackson. I have a copy of this, I just don't know where it went. And the last honorable mention that I have is They Never Learn by Lane Fargo, Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson, Echo Wife by Sarah Gailey.
That makes 5.
Is Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston, which...
Okay. Amari and the Night Brothers, it's funny because like I'm marking this as something we have in common, but I also haven't finished it. but I know that it's a favorite, but Liam and I didn't finish it. We borrowed it from the library, we read it together for a bit, we took a pause, but then I bought it for him for Christmas so we could finish it. So maybe like this does count as our actually 6th book in common. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna finish it, and then that'll count as like reading a book because of Deja. We probably read like a third of it.
So the book in my number 2 spot is Wolfsong by TJ Klune.
Oh,
number 1 book of the year. You probably know. I read this back in January. It's the 2nd book I read all year, and that is Pretty Girls by Kara Slaughter.
That makes 7. Okay, so every single person I've miscounted. So after this, I will go back and I'll watch all of the people that I said I had 4 in common with and just make sure. So I'm picking Amari, but I also want to pick another because I just don't think that that one totally makes sense. So I have 8 to choose from. Most of them are romance. The couple mysteries on here aren't ones that super interest me. So I'm choosing Wolfsong. What planet am I on right now? Let's watch Riley, who I think I had 5 in common with, but clearly I don't know anything.
My first favorite that I'm going to talk about is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. The other book was Raybearer by Jordan E. Fueco. Next book is They Never Learn by Lane Fargo.
Yes.
Book that I have is Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune, Hench by Natalie Zena Walcott. That is The Murders of Molly Southbourne by Today Thompson. So The Hollow Places by T. Kingfisher.
Yes, The Hollow Places.
And that is A Dowry of Blood by S.T.
A Dowry of
Gibson.
Blood. Oh my god, that's it. Okay, wait. We did have 5 in common and I have 4 to choose from. So I'm not really interested in The Whispering Door. I'm not interested in that one. Well, I'm not really interested in that one. Not really interested in that one. Oh. Oh no. Okay, I do not know. But I just watched the 5 that I think I have the most in common with. Now I'm gonna go off camera and watch everybody else's just to confirm. Okay, I just double checked everything. Everything is good. Those were the 5 booktubers at this point that I have the most in common with. I think at this point, the people who could like come in with a favorites video a little bit later and throw off this entire thing, the most likely people are like Meg, Lexi, Meg and Lexi. But I was working my way backwards and I just landed on Gavin, who I think I have 3 in common with. But I actually wanted to watch his with you because I think what could be fun is also reading, because we already have 5 booktubers. We're gonna pick 5 books from them. The second challenge, something also on a least favorites list, has not popped up. Something already on my TBR, like these 3 I'm going to read, but I bought them so recently that if you don't want to count these, then I'm sure I will end up picking one of these 3 as well. I haven't seen a book I haven't heard of except for like romance, which I'm not picking up. But I do remember when I was scrubbing through Gavin's that there were so many things I didn't recognize. What I thought would be fun is picking somebody who has my favorite book in their favorites, which is House of Leaves, and I know that Gavin does. So what if I picked something from his favorites, even though we don't have the most in common? Like maybe that would be fun. And then I also think that Erin has House of Leaves in her favorites. So what if I had to pick something from her and Gavin? Wouldn't that be fun? While I wait for my computer to turn back on, I'll also let you know that Finley Donovan was also co-signed by Nakia and Katie, who I had like 1 to 3 books in common with. And then Amari and the Knight Brothers was co-signed by Jess, Naomi, and Jamila. I did also see Hench, which was from Riley, show up on Sarah's channel, and that's where we're at. Let's see if we can hit these last 2 challenges with Gavin and Erin. So first, let me see them mention my favorite book.
House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielowski. I genuinely didn't know what was going on for half of it, and it's supposed to do that. It's supposed to mess your mind up. It's supposed to make you think like, what is actually going on?
Now let me see if there's something on his list that I haven't heard of or that I know is in somebody's least favorites.
Next we have a pretty recent book, and that is Ice Planet Barbarians by Ruby Dixon. This book surprised me, and I want to
Unlucky for me, I have heard of that. I'm sure it's on somebody's least favorites. Don't make me read this.
So the next book to surprise me was The Perfect Poo by M.G. Edwards. Yeah, I never ever thought
I haven't heard of that.
I would ever read something like this in my lifetime. Come Closer by Sarah Grant. This is horror. It's like possession story. You usually see possession stories from like the outside. But
Pause. I haven't heard of it. It looks short and he said it's horror. Okay, let me see if there's anything else that sounds better. Okay, as expected, there was a ton in that video I haven't heard of. But come closer, I'm adding. Unless Erin has something I've never heard of on hers. But I think Erin's more likely to have something that is on somebody's least favorites list. Oh, I didn't even have Erin on my playlist. Did I not scrub through Erin's? Oh my god, I didn't scrub through Erin's video. My bad. I just assumed we had nothing in common.
I think this one will surprise you all quite a bit.
I knew it would be here.
That is House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. I have never in my life read a book like this. Like, I don't even tab, but y'all see all these tabs. Like, honestly, I felt like I was losing my mind.
What else is on your list?
The number 6 spot, we've got To Sleep in a Sea of Stars by Christopher Paolini. This is my favorite sci-fi book that I have read this year. This was such an immersive experience.
No, this book is so long. I'm gonna keep watching, but this book showed up in at least 2 people's least favorites lists.
Night's Shadow by Sebastian Dickinson, the second book in the Great Coat series.
I haven't heard of that.
Ruin by John Gwynne, The Rhythm of War by Raina Sanderson. Jade Legacy by Fonda Lee. People Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry.
This has shown up a lot. I'm not reading it. You can't make me. Okay. Oh, what a mistake. I could just edit that out and pretend I never said it. But I actually think I'm gonna read To Sleep in a Sea of Stars. I've wanted to read it. If I'm remembering correctly, this was on it was on Reagan's least favorites list. And then I want to say Tori. Oh yeah, it's in her thumbnail. Oh, Tori just posted her favorites and I didn't have her on my list. Let me see if I can find something from her favorites, so I'm reading a favorite and a least favorite of hers, so I don't feel like it's solely negative.
And that is none other than Legendborn by Tracy Dion.
Legendborn. Wasn't that on Erin's least favorites list? Oh my god, I'm gonna make Erin and Tori battle, because they each had a favorite on the respective least favorites list.
Coming in at number 4 is Middle Game by Seanan Mcguire. I have gushed about Rainshot non-stop.
Oh, she also has Rainshot, which I just recently bought. This TBR is getting out of hand. Like, literally, what am I doing? Is it just me, or have I mentioned like 30 books that I want to read? Also, now that I think of it, Erin, I'm just scrubbing her most surprising books of the year video. We actually had more in common here than best books, but I'm pretty sure, there it is. She has Wolf Song on her list too. So that just gives me more reason to read it, I guess. I think the only challenge I haven't hit is selecting a book from someone with no similar books to me, and I actually think that I know what it is, because I was also just jotting down books that showed up a lot just so I could make note of them, ones that like maybe I should pick up at some point, like if it's everybody's favorite. But books that showed up quite a few times that I haven't already read are The Inheritance of Orquídea Divina and Know My Name, and Piranesi. These 2 were on booktubers who I had multiple things in common with. But okay, I just went and double checked because I think I was right, and like I am looking for an excuse to read this for sure. But it was on Lena's favorites, Jill's favorites, Lauren, Amy, and Leonie, who I did not have any books in common with. So that could mean that maybe it's not even going to be my thing, but it could mean that it's going to be a favorite of all time. And now I have 100 different things to read. So let me tally up what the heck I just did here, how many books I want to actually read within this video, how I can connect everything. I'll come back when I have some books ready and I'll show you a little chart of how I got here. Kayla from the future popping in with an explanation of everything that I plan to read in this video. If you're a channel member, there's a separate video. Skip over there right now to avoid being spoiled, because in that video I vlog the entire experience actually finding more titles. As I'm actually reading the books, those segments are chopped in. But for subscribers, here's a rundown. As more favorites videos came out during the month, I have 11 booktubers whose favorites align with mine. Mayana and Elizabeth had 10 in common with me. Gabby had 9, Ashley had 6, and then Deja, Riley, and Lexi all had 5. Since my goal was to read from 5 who had the most in common, and then 3 of them were tied for 5. I end up reading from 7. Then 4 other booktubers had my favorite book of the year in common with me. So from like 2019, Middle Game, Tori and Mel both had on their favorites lists. And from this year with House of Leaves, Erin and Gavin had it in their favorites. So my plans are to read Finlay Donovan is Killing It because of Mayana and Gabby. And also it was actually on the least favorites list from Elizabeth and Ashley. A History of Wild Places I'll be reading because of Gabby. The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein because of Ashley. Migrations again because of Ashley and Elizabeth. Rainshot will be because of Tori. Legendborn will also be because of Tori, and it's on Erin's least favorites list. To Sleep in a Sea of Stars will be because of Erin, and it was also on Tori's least favorites list. Wolfsong and Amari and the Night Brothers are because of Deja. Mel is also the reason I'm reading Amari and the Night Brothers. Hench is for Riley. Come Closer is for Gavin. And then When You Trap a Tiger is what I grabbed from Lexi. Those last 2 accomplish the goals of books I've never heard of. There are quite a few that were already on my TBR, and the last challenge is Piranesi, which meets the goal of a whole bunch of booktubers who I don't have anything in common with, but it was actually also on Lexi's favorites. I think that sums it all up, everything that I planned to read originally in this video. Spoilers, some things get ditched, some things get added, but you'll have to find that out throughout the video as I vlog. Let's begin! This is my first reading clip. I'm just editing a video today. I got like 20% into A History of Wild Places, and I don't know how to feel about it so far. So I went into this like not knowing anything. We were following this interesting character. He's basically trying to track someone down. It felt like the beginning of The Other People by CJ Tudor, and I was intrigued. It's got a little like Stephen King vibe. There's a little bit of reference to him being able to feel certain things, just like a little supernatural vibes. I was expecting a little bit more, especially considering we're also in this like commune. I did not know this was a cult book. I'm very worried now. This seems like inspired by the pandemic. There's this idea that outside of the commune, if you leave, you'll get the sickness. So this book isn't going well, but I'm almost done, and look how beautiful it is. I don't like it. I don't think it's particularly interesting. I find the repetition annoying, but it's like it's setting a good atmosphere. The actual plot is just not interesting me in any way because the whole mystery of the book is extremely obvious. I don't know if people like it because of the twist, or if they just like reading about these people and their fear, and they enjoy like reading about an enigmatic leader, and that's what draws people to this type of story. Like, just nothing is doing it for me in here. And also there is a couple errors in the book that give away the twist. I know this is gonna be so chaotic of me, but I'm giving this 1 star. I really don't like it. And it's not that it did things to like upset me. I feel like a lot of 1 stars, this is why I need to adjust my rating scale a little bit, because when I say 1 star, you think, oh my god, this book did something offensive. Like this book made you uncomfortable, it like hurt your feelings. Like this is just not a good book. A lot of it doesn't make sense. So many of the characters' motivations make no sense because you don't get to spend time with any other characters much besides like a couple people. There's a little book inside the book, which there really isn't too much inserted, but like those portions got too heavy-handed for me. You know, it's trying to show you how things are linked, and I get the purpose of it, but like, oh my god, it was a lot. It was a lot to take. So much like you might be interested in reading this book now because it's Gabby's favorite and my least favorite, I'm gonna move on to a book that is someone's least favorite and someone's favorite. Okay, today I did a live show with Erin. I took a bath and I've been listening to the audiobook of To Sleep in a Sea of Stars like all day. I'm like only 25% into it now, and I actually think I'm gonna put a pause on it and pick up the physical copy just because I feel like I'm not following everything. A lot's happening really fast, and I don't actually technically know the premise. So I just remembered last year I put clips in of other people explaining the books. So let's do that again.
This was a very plot-driven book, and the world and the science was just so well done and so detailed. Like I was so engaged. These are like my favorite aliens that I've ever encountered.
Yeah, I would say it's very technical, it's very detailed, and as someone who doesn't read a ton of sci-fi, like it's definitely going over my head. It's another day of reading this. I have read other things that you'll see after this. I picked up the physical copy and I chopped it into fifths, and I'm determined to get through each fifth each day. But so far it's just really repetitive scenes of like her falling asleep, having a dream and waking up and not knowing where she is, and then falling asleep and having a dream and waking up and constantly gasping. It's all about her breath. She's letting out a breath she didn't know she was holding, and she's letting out another breath, and then she's sighing. It's clearly evident this is written by a man. It's just like there have been 2 scenes so far where she's like she's like going through horrific things, like people that she's closest to are dying. She like wakes up and there's been a horrific catastrophe, and she's like touching her body to make sure she's all good, and then she like, I forget how it was described, but she's like in the lower part of her body, she's like, I'm not trying to touch myself in a sexual way, don't worry, like I'm not ready for that yet, I'm just checking myself out. And it was like, duh, like what? Not only did I not finish this in 5 days, it's now 20 days later. My rating is probably a 3. There are some really interesting concepts in here. My favorite being the idea of a ship mind, which, lucky for us, there's like a glossary. It's basically like the human mind at its like highest capability, turning into something that can control the operations of a ship. My favorite thing about this is the idea of like ownership of your body. There were a couple scenes I really liked where it was this idea of like coming back to your own consciousness. I don't know how to describe the plot of this. I don't think I really know the plot. It's a lot of space war. I've decided I'm not going to include the people's negative reviews that I was thinking of including clips, because I don't want to put anyone else's like negative opinion to be critiqued by others. I just don't think that's a fair thing to really do. But as the intent of this and a couple other books were to read books that are least favorites, I think it's good to like talk about what some of people's least favorite things were. The number one thing that I see is the characters, which I agree with. This isn't the type of book that is equally powerful in its concept and its character development, and I feel like if it was balanced I could have enjoyed it more. The other thing that people talk about is the pace, and specifically the repetition, and how you could cut 200 pages and it would be the same story because it's the same kind of scene over and over again. So I'm sure I'm going to say this multiple times, but I do understand people who like this and I understand people who don't like this. I'm going to get into The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein. I can't even remember who originally introduced me to this or why I picked it up. And it's funny because I just mentioned Kiersten White in my 2022 most anticipated books, because she has her adult debut called Hyde, I think it was. So I think it'd be cool to introduce myself to her here before I pick up her newest thing. I also don't fully know the synopsis of this, so let's have Ashley tell us about it.
This is a Frankenstein retelling that follows Elizabeth, the wife of Frankenstein. She moves in with Victor's family as a child. She ends up getting taken in by them to be his sort of friend and playmate, and then he kind of goes missing, and she's really concerned about that. She wants to find him, and then she starts getting wind of the monster that he has become.
Hello. I have fantastic news. I loved this. It means I liked one of Ashley's favorites, which her favorites list was literally like half and half my favorite books and my least favorite books of the year when it comes to horror. I'm glad that I know of her as somebody who can appreciate like a slower paced novel, and that gives me hope for like what Migrations is going to be, because it's just, I find a lot of times when I read a book that's slower paced, especially in a genre that's supposed to be like horror or thriller, that's a critique that comes in. So it's exciting because I'm newer to Ashley's content, so it's nice to find somebody who, I don't know, I guess like slower books too. This is like the first gothic novel I've ever really enjoyed. Frankenstein as a story is not something that I feel really close to and that is beloved, but I'm familiar enough with it, and I get the role that Elizabeth plays more or less. So it's just so interesting seeing her as the main character in here. She is a teenager, which is just a great reference. Like in the author's note, Kiersten White talks about the fact that Mary Shelley like invented science fiction as a teenager, and she herself like couldn't or didn't take all of the focus of writing her own novel. Like even in Mary Shelley's introduction to the book, she like talked about her husband basically. And so Kiersten White, loving Frankenstein, wanted to make Elizabeth the main character and show like really the depth of her character. So we get a lot of her like motivations for things. And she's just such a fascinating character. This was definitely very slow paced. It was like a character study. I'm giving this a 4.5. I can't think of anything to critique about this. So, woo! Today is the day for Pure and Essie. I'm just very intrigued by this. I don't know much about it besides when it gets recommended to me. So like when I talk about The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue or Station 11 or The Midnight Library and House of Leaves, and when I talk about books I didn't like The 10,000 Doors of January or The Library at Mount Char or The Starless Sea. This gets compared to those as far as like contemplative fiction or evocative fantasy. It's about a house and there are endless halls and there's secret knowledge. I'm halfway through Pure and Essie, and respectfully, what's going on? We have one in character, Pure and Essie, or is that his name? And then we have the other, like the other guy, and they're worried about other people coming in and learning the knowledge, but now they're questioning if the hall full of knowledge is actually, like, if there's knowledge there. And Pure and Essie's whole thing is that like he never forgets anything, so he's like the perfect person to live here and do what he's supposed to be doing. But then like, does he actually remember things, or is he forgetting that he's forgotten things? I did it! Yay! This is like an objectively good story. Did I feel super emotionally connected to it? Did it have like a huge impact on me? No, but it's a 4-star. I also think this is a lot more like accessible, is that the right word, than I assumed it would be. I know I'm not talking about the plot at all, and I'm not going to, like I can't say any more about it, but sometimes when there's a book like this that I see a certain type of booktuber reading and people are recommending to me because they know I like weird things, I often expect it to be a little too sophisticated for me, or that it's going to take a lot to like really understand or get into, but this wasn't that at all, and I feel like I could recommend this to anybody, so that's really cool. Time to decide what I'm reading next. I went to the library and picked up Migrations, and then I went to Indigo and I picked up Legendborn, and then I went to Value Village. I found The Humans. I know I didn't say this was going to be in my TBR. This isn't the book that I chose, but it felt like a sign. My rule is if I get through all of the books on this TBR, which is already at 12, then I will try to fit this in as well. But to pick what I'm reading next, I'm already reading 2 like SFF books. So we're going to read Migrations. And we'll have Elizabeth tell us about it because I don't think I really listened to what she said.
She wants to follow this Arctic tern on their last migration. She finds this ship of fishermen that she tries to convince them to let her on. And then along the way, you figure out her entire backstory. You figure out why she wants to follow these Arctic terns.
I'm 27 pages in, and I think I love it. So current day, she's trying to get on this ship with these guys, and she meets them all like at a pub, and it's a very like found family type of vibe. Then she drops a little bomb on us, and then we're jumping back in time 2 years ago, and we're going to find out more about her past, and I think that's going to be consistent throughout the book, and that is a writing style that's one of my favorite things. Oh my gosh, Migrations was such a lovely book. I'm going to be a little bit of a cynic and say that I didn't love the ending. I mean, objectively, I love it, and like I get it because this book has a very clear intent. I definitely can't imagine it ending any other way, but I was hoping a little bit. 4.5 stars, really solid. Definitely recommend. I typically love near future settings, so I definitely recommend fans of this pick up like Moon of the Crusted Snow, just because they both also have like that chilly atmosphere. I felt like I was here. I was cold. I was in the water. I was freezing. And I just learned upon finishing this that it's by the same author as, what's the title of that wolf one? This is on my TBR. I want to read it so bad, and I'm even more hyped to pick it up now knowing it's from the same person. This is a bigger book than I fully realized. I started it last night. It's 400 pages. I'm a third of the way through. I don't fully understand what henching really is. And I don't know where the story's gonna go because it seems so chaotic. So I need an explanation.
There's superheroes flying about, saving people. Everybody knows about them, except they cause a lot of destruction. Our main character actually works as like a temp agent for villains, and one day on the job she has a run-in with a very famous superhero. It puts her in the hospital and leaves her permanently disabled. That is sort of her villain story origin.
So that's where I'm at right now. And like, I am intrigued enough to continue because it feels like a shift is happening.
She now has a one-track mission of revenge and taking down superheroes.
The main character's like narration style isn't for me, but I do historically like revenge stories. I have a couple hours right now in the car before I have to pick up my dad from physio, and I'm just gonna blow through a good chunk of this and we'll see how it goes. I finished Hench. It matches my shirt. As expected. This was not for me. I don't think superhero stories like are for me at all, but the thing about reading booktubers favorites is, yeah, I want to read ones that I think we have similar taste and that maybe I'll like, but also I just like staying up to date with what like my favorite booktubers are even reading and up to. So this is getting like a 2. I think the concept was interesting. The main character is, I didn't like reading from her perspective. It's not that I think it was poorly done. I just don't know that the main character is written in a way that's easy to understand where she's coming from, because she has a lot of opinions, but a lot of her opinions are contradictory. But I guess you could say that's a well done part of the story, is that she subverts certain expectations. Anyway, there was potential here, but it just didn't totally work for me. It's way too much action. But for somebody who's picking up a superhero book, who wants a superhero book with lots of action, which is what you expect from a superhero book, I'm sure it's perfect. The mail has come and these two arrived. This is much bigger than I thought. So instead of moving on to Wolf Song, I'm going to read Come Closer by Sarah Gran. I don't want to watch the clip with Gavin right now because this is such a short book. I don't want anything ruined for me. I just know that it's about possession. And then we'll watch it after and see if what he liked, I liked, or if I like it. All right, that was a very jarring intro. I wasn't expecting the F slur on the very first page. So our main character is already like doing things that she doesn't remember doing. So I'm hoping that this is an actual like demonic possession story, and I feel like it's going to be, and not just like a metaphorical one or like a mental health related situation. Okay, I didn't update you at all while I was reading that. It was a very quick read. I have thoughts, but I'm gonna see what Gavin had to say.
I could not see a way out for the main character, so I was like literally holding on to every paragraph, just hoping upon hope that something will change and something will happen and the main character will be saved. But it was such a hopeless and desolate situation that I just wasn't sure how that was going to happen. And one that I think is quite underrated. I don't think I've seen anyone talk about this.
I have now. Yeah, so this book actually came out in 2003, but I was most interested to read it because Sarah Gran has something coming out that I'm intrigued by for 2022. And guess what? This was 5 stars. It is evident that it's written in 2003. There are like some language things that I don't love. Not scary. It's not creepy necessarily. It's just very grim. You're following this woman and she's losing control over her own decisions and she's having like blackouts. There wasn't like twists. There were some disturbing little moments, and it was also like fun because she keeps taking this quiz that is like, are you possessed by a demon? She has to take it like once a week, and eventually she just like starts checking off more things on the list. It was a little bit weird and it was a good time. Now on to Rainshot. It's the end of the day. Nope. Finished Rainshot. I did it. And it was a lot. I thought I was gonna bang it out really quick and listen to the audiobook while just like getting some stuff done around the house, but I hated the audiobook, which is weird because normally books written in first person present if anything, I struggle with reading physically. In the end, this was another 5-star. I read 2 5-star novellas today. 2 5-star horror novellas. Fantasy, science fiction, horror, but also like a lot of real realities is what I was about to say. It's late. Listen to Tori explain it far better than I could.
The story takes place in an alternate version of the Jim Crow South, and our main character Maurice is a monster hunter. She hunts Ku Kluxes, and Ku Kluxes are demons that inhabit the bodies of KKK members. And the characters themselves are so well fleshed out, and the audiobook version is also incredible. I physically read this and then afterwards listened to the audiobook, and the performance of the audiobook, amazing.
Yeah, I mean, we as humans obviously all have very different like tastes and styles. The book itself is like meant to be also, I think it calls it dark humor, and the narrator is very like performative about the whole thing, which is obviously how they wanted it to be read. So I feel like I saw news about this becoming a movie. It was a very well described situation, like all of the characters and everything that they did. I could visualize it so well that I want to see it on screen. I feel similarly to this as I did with Trail of Lightning, like the creature and fantasy stuff, and then also all of just like the fascinating conversations and how they exist in this fantasy world, but they also obviously have a lot of relevance to history and current day experiences. This is fantastic. Highly recommend. Very intense.
She's a Mona Lisa.
Good morning, friends. Today I am reading Finley Donovan is Killing It. I'm doing reading sprints with Erin. Here we are. A woman, and she's like at a coffee shop. She's writing a book. Someone overhears her talking about killing someone, but it's in her book. And someone thinks that it's happening like in real life, and then they want to hire her to like kill their spouse or something like that. Her husband's an asshole, is like telling her job as an author isn't real and she's behind on all her bills, and he decided to fire her nanny because he doesn't take her job seriously. So now she's desperate for money, and now I think everything's gonna kick off. But you can watch some other people pitch it while I read.
This woman who like she's like down in life, you know, like her husband's trying to take her kids, she can't write that book, and she's just not really killing it, you know. I really love this book, and it was just so good. It was funny,
and I loved like the side romance that was going on in this book. Like there was just so much to love about it. I also love the fact that it ends on this note where you're just like, excuse me, what?
Okay, reading update. This is a very funny book. It's ridiculous. It's very entertaining. But also I'm getting very angry at every decision that Finley is making. Obviously she doesn't know what she's doing, but like every single thing that she's doing I'm getting so mad about, because I'm like, you're gonna get found out. Like, you're making every mistake possible. I loved it. 5 stars. It's so silly, and the hijinks were just constant and ridiculous. It's kind of stupid, and I was not expecting a love triangle, but it was fun. It kind of reminded me of Good Girls, so I'd recommend that to anyone who hasn't watched it yet. And I'm so glad it was 5 stars, because that gives me a little like redemption with reading Gabby's favorites, which I really needed. I might have made a mistake. You know, sometimes it's fun picking up books and not knowing what they're about. Sometimes we all just make mistakes. I'm only 50 pages in. I thought it was going to be like very real world setting, but the first 50 pages really threw me for a loop. It's giving me very much Cassandra Clare, Laini Taylor vibes, and I'm worried about myself. And then I looked at the Goodreads and it said something about King Arthur. Tori, pitch me this book, please.
I love the way that Tracy Deonn weaves this legend of Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table just so seamlessly into this story. We're following this character, Bree, and she recently lost her mother, and she falls in with this group of students who are a part of this order. More secrets start spilling out that maybe her mother's death wasn't an accident, and just things start to come to light about her own history and her female ancestors and the women in her past, and I love that aspect of the story so much.
I'm slowly but surely making progress. I'm liking it more now. I'm like 150 pages from the end. Would I prefer this book if it was written in dual POV? When a character is brand new to a world and so much is being explained to them, I need a second POV. The book is so bogged down with explanation. And there has to be this explanation because there's this magic system. Every single person that she meets needs to explain something new to her. If one of the boys in here was another POV, or even if we had 3 or 4 POVs, there could be a more subtle way of introducing the magic rather than just like, I'm so unaware and so naive and teach me, teach me, teach me. Half of it could be from a perspective of somebody who already knows these things and they're teaching it more to us as a reader than to the main character, because I'm just exhausted. If you had told me in the first half that I was going to end up giving this like a 3.5, 4 by the end, I would have been surprised. Still don't think by the end, even with all the explanations, that I fully grasped all of the things that are going on. I liked all of this stuff that was like about ancestors and the history of magic, the history of the school, and obviously the history of mages and that whole system. But did it do something like super special for me? No. Will I consider picking up the sequel? Yeah, I will.
Sprint to the front door.
And
is this some kind of joke?
I should think not.
He frowned.
I only do deliveries part-time, but I take it seriously. I know I haven't vlogged much of reading Amari and the Night Brothers, but I've now completed it. This was on everybody's favorites list. Everyone gave it 5 stars. I gave it 5 stars. It is a really good setup for a series that I think we're going to continue just for years to come. I'm so excited about the age that this like came out for him. Be able to read it and be a similar age as the main character and like grow with her. Amari basically joins this like, well, she goes to camp kind of, but it's this secret group. She's first trying to find her missing brother and then she gets caught up in all of it. She makes a lot of friends. The side characters are just as strong. I loved learning about all of them. I just loved seeing Amari connect with people because basically there are these badges to earn and there are these secret skills that you have, and she has like an illegal one and she ends up being really ostracized and just doesn't feel like she belongs, and that's the same as what's kind of happening in her real life. This was the perfect mix for me of real world and magic, and you get to see her grow into herself, become more comfortable. I think we'll see her being more assertive in future books. A lot of stuff is happening to her, and I hope as we continue in the series, like she challenges what she thinks she can do, or she even like breaks outside of this perfect mold and like following all the rules. So as expected, this is a 5-star. I already knew it was a favorite middle grade even without finishing it, so I'm glad I took the opportunity in this video to just complete it and read one of the most common favorites of the year. Today, I just did a live with Bree for some reading sprints on her channel, and somebody was talking about how they were reading this in the comments, and they said it was werewolf smut, and now I'm worried. I thought I was just reading a nice werewolf love story. I don't know what I thought. So let's actually find out what this is about.
When I tell you, I have never sobbed like I have in this book. I wasn't even like I had like a little bit of tears. I was sobbing. So in this book we follow our main character Ox, and Ox was kind of abandoned by his father when he was really young, and he just lives in this city. And when he's 16, a new family moves into town. He becomes friends with this little boy who's like probably like 8 or 9 at the beginning of the book. So they have like a pretty decent age gap, but they become such good friends. And when the son is about like 17, 18, and Ox is in like his early to mid 20s, they start to have a romance.
This is starting to seem like a bad idea. Were you all questioning my decision when I picked this? Wish me luck. It's many hours later. Let's all acknowledge that this was an error. I'm sure you already knew it was an error. I'm going to apologize for making you think that I was going to read that. But I wanted to give it a good go, just so people wouldn't be like, oh, you didn't even try. Like maybe you could like this type of story. 100 pages. I did it? Absolutely fucking not. Absolutely not. No. This was a mistake. I take full responsibility. So sorry. I truly don't have thoughts to share. Like I don't. this isn't a book for me. Like I thought wrongly what this totally was gonna be. What I just did though is I ran to my library because the one just down the street had Jar of Hearts. Seeing as the other Gabby pick that was a mystery really worked for me, I think there's opportunity with this one. And I obviously want to give myself another chance with one of Deja's picks. I'm 10% in. It's the first time I've spoken today. It's not going great. We're following a woman who's in jail. Don't really know if she's responsible for the crime that she went to jail for. Basically, back when they were in high school, her older boyfriend, who was out of high school, committed a crime with her. Like, they did something together. Now I'm trying to figure out if the whole book is gonna be in jail. I'm about 25% through now. I honestly just like can't see why this would be anybody's favorite at this point. I don't really feel like there's a mystery. It's dark. It's talked about pedophilia and dead children. I just really don't know where it's going. I'm halfway through. This is definitely a quick read, but I'm about to go live with my channel members and I'm gonna try to read the second half of it live because I think that'll be fun. We are flashing back to when they were like 16 and some moments then of their friendship and her becoming consumed with this relationship, and then we're also current day as she has gotten out of jail. I finished my book. I should have just read Wolfsong. This is one of the worst thrillers I've ever read. Like, literally what? 1 star. I hated it. First of all, I was bored. The twists were like predictable and stupid. It was like Karen Slaughter on crack, super gratuitous and over the top and ridiculous at the end, but like not in a well-crafted way, like not in a way that really even made any sense. I feel like I'm a bit of a broken record sometimes when I constantly say like, I didn't like it, but I get why people do. Especially when it comes to thrillers. I say it all the time because I give so many thrillers 3 stars. So at least this time, like, it's a 1 star, and with all due respect, besties, I don't get this. I'm really gonna have to watch some reviews like on my own time to understand what did it in this, because I don't think the reveals are good. I just don't think anything is surprising. It was really like lazy character work. Not to mention the spelling and grammar issues that I had that the audiobook didn't. But then also just like all of the unbelievable dialogue. It was like these characters would have pages and pages of discussion about something, and then a character would go, do you think that these 2 things are related? When it was like, that was what the entire conversation was about. I'm bummed. I really wanted to support a Canadian author. I hate that this is like the first time talking about Deja on my channel and it's like negativity with 2 books. So I would like to formally apologize. Like I've said before though, a lot of things with mysteries specifically have to do with timing for me. So I'm sure that there are books in my past that have been similar to this that now I would probably take issue with some things. I do have a couple days left until I wanted to post this, so let's get into the humans.
This man who is a mathematician, and he's on the verge of discovering this equation, this mathematical theory that has never been proven before, and it could change everything. The aliens have been watching us from afar, and they're like, this guy's onto this, and the humans are not ready. They send one of their aliens to basically take over the body of this mathematician. Then he slowly falls in love with humanity.
What I'll say about my brief experience with Matt Haig is he's very heavy-handed. Like, I feel like you know the intent of the book from the very beginning and how you're supposed to feel. So I'm a little more than halfway. I was gonna say it's fine so far. Actually, I don't really like it so far. It's not doing much for me. There is this idea, like I talked about with Finley Donovan, that is a mistaken identity story. I feel like this would almost like classify as that. This alien guy just has to pretend that he knows everything. Just getting exhausting, like just constantly asking everyone like, oh, what do I normally call you? Is our marriage pretty good or what? And we just hit the trope that I hate within this thing, when you're having to rediscover something about yourself. I know in this case it's not the same because it's an alien, it's not actually him. But when you're just thrown in a scenario and you have to readjust your expectations of like the person you thought you were or he thought this person was, there's this one specific thing that every single book does and makes the character out to be a certain way, and like there's a reason for it, but it's annoying having to read it so many times. I finished it. I wish that I had something more interesting to share, or like that I had a stronger opinion. My final rating is a 3. I feel like this was a really predictable book. It hit every beat that I was expecting it to hit. There are a lot of people who need this type of story, who like need someone to say like there's a reason to keep on living, like there's purpose, and you always have a second chance, and you can always just start again. I get it. I really get it. It didn't do anything for me. So we're on to the final book of the video. I'm gonna see if I can read it in one day, but the final one is When You Trap a Tiger by Keller. I only just recently heard about this for the first time from a couple people who typically read middle grade. It was in their favorites. The one that comes to mind is Ashley from Bookish Realm. I think me and Ashley only had like 2 books in common, but there's a very high chance of me enjoying this because of me and Lexi's aligning tastes. Since it was in Lexi's honorable mentions, she didn't actually talk about the book, so I'll see if I can find a clip from another video, and then I'll also have Ashley pop in because like I have her talking about it.
To be kind of brief on, because I have not finished that. I'm on page 100, and that is When You Trap a Tiger by Keller. It's kind of like a contemporary fiction, but it has a lot of really beautiful fantasy elements woven in, along with some Korean folklore. This is following Lily, and Lily, her big sister, and her mom have all moved across the country basically to stay with her grandma. And then once she is there, she sees a tiger that mysteriously like pops up in the middle of the road. But no one else can see it, just Lily.
And it is a newberry winter. If you know anything about newberries, then you know that they have a tendency to make readers cry. Lily is moving in with her grandmother, her Harmony, with her mom and her sister because she is getting sick. Harmony is getting sick, and they are there to kind of help take care of her.
Okay, I'm excited. So the reason I picked this of all Lexi's options is because it was available as an audiobook, because I just picked it today and I'm trying to read it all today while I actually edit this video. And it was relatively short compared to the other ones that were also available via audio. This book is so good. Rob and Liam are out right now, and I told Rob to stop at our local like indie bookstore because there's one copy remaining in stock. I actually am already planning on rereading it physically because the audiobook is great, but I think like for the emotional impact this type of story can have, reading it physically for me is the best way. I love books where storytelling is part of like the story. And it's funny how like both of the other books that I have with tiger in the title on the cover, like Night Tiger and When a Tiger Came Down the Mountain, those are about storytelling too, and they have this little fantastical element too. Even though you know going into it it's gonna make you cry, and it's about somebody like losing their grandmother, and she's slowly discovering throughout the book how sick her grandmother is, it's still having that impact is just really impressive. I think an obvious comp title, I would recommend it for fans of A Monster Calls. Alright, I finished it. As expected and as intended. It hurt me. It's a really quick story, and it's obviously a middle grade, so there's not too much to dive into as far as like more plot discussions to have. I'm just so stoked that I had 2 middle grades that I love so much, and I'll be passing it along to Liam. Or I guess he's picking it up for himself right now. The idea of identity is the #1 like impactful thing in here, and the author's note talks about like her Korean background and how she grew up with certain stories and felt like she was losing those as she grew up, and there's like this pairing with identity and the idea of losing or never really having felt a connection to your heritage. The main character is super relatable. She starts out never really knowing how to feel and how to react, and looks to everyone around her for how to respond to things because she's the youngest in her family and feels like she has to protect like the feelings of other people. She doesn't really let herself explore her own emotions, and that was a big important shift of the story, is like connecting with her grandma, learning from her and learning from this tiger, and gaining more a sense of identity. And it was just really beautiful, and I'm glad that was my last read, and I'm glad I made time for it. And that's the end. All right, that's it. Quick wrap up. I read 14 books this month. Going in order of rating, These ones were at the bottom and I expected them to be higher. These two were next in line, falling pretty much where I expected them to. These ones were a middle ground, like between 3 and 4 stars. Again, I guess where I expected them to be. These 3, 4 to 4.5 stars were, I think, better than I expected. And then I had 5 5-star reads, including the tiger one. Seeing as these 2 weren't on my TBR and I hadn't heard of them before this video, stoked on that. Excited the books on my TBR ended up being as good as I had hoped. And the one that caught me most off guard, because it's my favorite from the entire video, is Finlay Donovan. And I already have pre-ordered the sequel, so look forward to me reading that. Let me know if you're planning on reading any of these now or your thoughts on anything that I read, and I'll see you later. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!